Just realized my music was on. I'm like, I wonder if it's playing music in the background. Hey everybody, I'm Mitch. This is the Fit for Moto YouTube channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're doing episode 2 of Motocross 101, answering questions that you might be too afraid to ask. Now, in the first episode, we talked about how do you get to the track? What do you do when you get there? What are some things to keep in mind? What kind of track etiquette should I be looking at? We touched on a bunch of that stuff. What's the minimum gear that I need to ride at a track? All that kind of stuff that you might not know. Now, in this video, I want to talk about some really basic bike setup or rider setup stuff that, again, you just might not know, but makes a world of difference when it comes to you as a rider. So, we're going to talk about some really basic stuff on bike setup that will help you. So roll the intro and let's get right into it. Let's just start off first with the handlebars. Now, when you get a bike, you know, they'll probably still have the stock handlebars unless you've bought something that's used in aftermarket and stuff like that. And I will do a completely separate video on handlebars alone because there's so many styles, bends, all different kinds of options. But let's just go with what you currently have on your bike. When it comes to your handlebars, there's something that you want to keep in mind is how far forward or how far back they are. If you're really new at this, I'm gonna say just go with what feels normal. You don't want them too far back so you have your elbows tucked down, and obviously you don't want them too far forward so your elbows are way up and it looks kind of weird. Really, it's just all about comfortability. So put the bars in a position where they feel comfortable on the bike, and that's a really good starting point. Now, one thing that a lot of people get wrong is their lever position. A lot of times, people either have their levers way too low, which is super common, or they have their levers way too high. You really want to avoid either one of those. What you're shooting for is when you have your hands on the bars, your levers in your hands are just at a little bit of an angle. That's really what you're shooting for. So when you're standing, the levers aren't too low and they're not too high when you're standing, right? But also when you're sitting, you're not having to reach in either direction for those either. Just a slight angle is really what you're looking for in your lever position. So not too low, not too high. Again, with the levers, the other thing that you want to do is how far in are they from the handlebars? Well, you want to be able to use primarily your two fingers on your hands to do both of those. So clutch and front brake, typically you want to be using either finger on either one of those, which means the levers can't be too far in and they can't be too far out either, because you want to have it in a nice sweet spot in the bend. That's really a good starting point. And again, this is all just starting point. You may develop something that you like more, but when we're talking really basic rider setup here, it's really what you want to start with. So we've got the handlebars and we've got the levers figured out. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the rider triangle. You may hear some people talking about that. What is a rider triangle? A rider triangle is the position between your handlebars, your controls, your seat, and your foot pegs. So if you can imagine a triangle here, that's the rider triangle. And the reason that that's so important is because we're all built differently. Some people are taller, some people are shorter. The rider triangle really affects how you sit on the machine. Now, from a beginner standpoint, other than your controls, what you just touched on, you're not really going to adjust much. You're not going to get a taller seat or a smaller seat, a lowering kit. You're probably not going to change the position of your foot pegs or anything like that. So your rider triangle is probably going to be pretty much what the bike is stock, okay? Like I said, unless you bought something aftermarket and they've got that rider triangle all jacked up. But if you hear that, that's what that refers to. Because the position between your foot peg, your seat, and your controls in that triangle, where you're standing affects everything. Other than when you're braking, you don't want your knees to break forward of that rider triangle. Okay, I really want you to keep that in mind. So if you're cornering, you want your knees to break forward so you can get your leg up and do the corners. But other than that, you really want your knees over top of your foot peg and within that rider triangle. Something really easy to keep in mind as far as setup goes, and you may hear that. Now, the last thing to talk about when it comes to rider setup is your sag, and you probably have heard that, or maybe you haven't heard that before, and you have no idea what it is. And I've done videos on rider sag before, but I'll talk about it really briefly in this one, and then if you need to set it, you can go check out one of my other videos. I'll put a link below on where you can find that video to get it set for you. Rider sag is the difference between 2 points on your bike. So the difference between your axle bolt and just a landmark on your fender. Now, as you can tell, there's a certain gap here on my bike, right? Well, when I take the bike off the stand and the suspension compresses a little bit, it sags. That's one of the sag points. When I sit on the bike with my full weight, which I'll show you here, see how the bike like sets down like that? That's what's called your static sag. So just when there's nobody on the bike, it just sits down. The difference between your axle bolt and a landmark on your fender, that is the static sag. And then obviously when I sit on it, the bike sits and sags more. That's rider sag. The reason that matters so much is because it changes the pitch and the angle of the bike, and that completely changes how the bike handles. So you'll probably have an OEM manual, and if you don't, just look up an OEM manual on Google or something for your bike and find out what the recommended sag is, rider sag for your bike. And like I say, just mention another video about that. You can set that all up for yourself, and it'll be really, really easy to change how the bike handles. But rider sag is super important. Generally, it's around 100 to 105 millimeters, depending on the bike, but you'll figure it out if you look for your manual. So really quick, really simple things. Your control setup, rider triangle, if you've heard of that, and the sag on your bike. Okay, those are really, really simple, straightforward beginner things that you may be wondering, what the hell are those? I hope that helps a ton. Stay tuned for episode 3 of Motocross 101. Questions you were too afraid to ask. I hope that helps. Hit subscribe for me. I'm gonna get out there and do some riding. We'll see you in the next video.